Hi, this is Professor Hazera again, and this is the third recording on financial statement ratios. I'm going to continue the sheet that I've been working on. In the first two videos, the first one we covered the inputs, go back and look at those. And the second one we covered liquidity ratios. This is going to be a short video because we only need two ratios here. And these are ratios, the leverage ratios. Now, what is leverage? Leverage basically is the amount of debt a company has. The more debt, especially long-term debt, we're really talking about long-term debt here. The more long-term debt a company has, the more levered it is. This long-term debt usually consists of bonds. That's probably the most common type of corporate debt, let's say, for long-term considerations. There's also maybe some long-term notes payable, but this really is considering debt that lasts for more than a year. Bonds can go 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever. Okay, so let's look at the two ratios. Now, bondholders, they're the ones that are owed the money, and they're the ones, and bond market. People who might buy bonds on the bond market would also be interested. So people either owning a company's bonds or deciding whether to buy a company's bonds would be especially interested in these two ratios. Okay, and the first ratio measures whether or not a company can pay interest on the bonds, or a company has enough income to pay interest on the bonds. And the second one really measures a company's ability to pay the principal. The principal is the amount that's borrowed, and the interest is the annual interest that you pay on that loan. Okay, so the first ratio here is going to be times interest earned, and the second ratio here is going to be operating income. Okay, so, and these are two easy ratios because the first one comes all from the income statement, and the second one comes all from the balance sheet. Okay, so let's go. Let's take a look at the first one. Operating income is going to be found on balance sheet. What am I saying? The income statement. And for September 20th, 2004, there it is. You can't be any clearer. Operating income. Now, not all companies have this line item, so sometimes you have to calculate it. Usually it's gross margin less operating expenses. Anyway, so but they calculate it, so here it is. So 123,213. And then you're just going to divide that by interest expense. Now, here's why interest expense is so important. Sometimes companies bury it in a line item and then don't show it, like Apple. If you go back to the first video, Apple did not report its interest expense. I came to the conclusion that the Bing artificial intelligence copilot came up with the right answer because Apple has about 85 billion in debt, reported no interest expense, but then Bing, using the sources such as financial analysts, that type of thing, calculated that Apple had about pay between 4 and 5% interest, so about 4.7% interest. So that's why I put this interest expense up here, because it took a lot of let's say research to get from the internet. But I cannot believe that a company with $85 billion in debt had no interest expense. They did, like I said at the end of that video, they didn't report any. That doesn't mean they didn't have any. Okay, so let's go ahead and divide these two, and I'm going to go ahead and get the ratio. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and put these dollar signs in here. All these items here obviously are dollars. Okay, you don't need to have any zeros on there either, so we'll put the dollar signs on there. Okay, and then let's go ahead and bring the ratio down to 3 decimal places just to get it a little more um, formatted with the other ratios. So 26 point, let's see the number, let's get 3. Okay, now this ratio is labeled times, and this means that Apple from operating, earned more or less, I'll just say 26.2 times its interest expense. Now, that really is a very good ratio. So if you're thinking of lending Apple money for the long term, You're asking yourself, will they be able to pay my annual interest expense? Assuming that they had $4,700, 4,700 in this case, we'll just leave the zeros off, dollars interest expense here. They earned 123 from their operations. So just from operating, they earned 26 times the interest expense, and that looks good. Obviously, if you're um, wanting to lend this company money, TIE is better if it's higher. T times interest earned is higher, is better. The higher the better if it is higher. So obviously you would want a company earning 26 times rather than 5 times. Because once you get to the point where you're not making enough to pay your interest, you're probably not going to last much longer. Okay. The second one measures the debt to equity ratio. Now, um, this is a measurement of whether or not a company can ultimately pay the principal. And people who have loaned the company money obviously don't want it to be too much in debt. It's like some people have too much credit card debt. The more credit card debt you have, the less the less you're able to pay off your credit cards. The more you drown in credit card debt, the lower your rating gets. So anyway, so that's the same principle here. If you have too much debt, your credit rating is going to go down. The interest you have to pay is going to go up. And at a certain point, if you have too much debt, people are just going to, they're just not going to lend you money. Okay, so we're going to do here, we're going to take the denominator. I'm going to take total liabilities. Now, some people just argue that you should take total long-term liabilities, and that's probably a good argument. There are adjusted versions of this ratio where you take long-term liabilities only and divide by equity. But we'll take total liabilities just to keep it simple. Okay, so let's just go over to the balance sheet. And the balance sheet has, let's say, total liabilities. Let's see, total liabilities right here. This is why we classify balance sheets, so you can just pull these ratios off. Total equity on the balance sheet is right there, total equity. And so the ratio is, Apple has $308 billion of liabilities and only $57 of equity. So think about that for a second. It's going to be a very high ratio. Okay, and so we'll reformat this to dollars here. And we'll reformat this. We'll use a standard 3 decimal places out. Okay, so, and you can also label this as times. And what does this mean? That, or you could dollars, either one, but basically for every dollar of equity that somebody owns in the company, Apple owes creditor $5.41. So that's a very high ratio. Usually you like this ratio to be less than 1, to have more equity than liabilities, but not in the case of Apple. It's not something I'd worry about in the case of Apple because their cash flow is really good. It's something we don't really cover in this course, but they do have, they have so much cash they could pay off any debt they want at any time, just because their profit margins are so high. And when you have high profit margins, you generate a lot of cash. And they're selling a lot of inventory too. Okay, but anyway, so let's put the ratio, the interpretation on it. Apple has 5.41 time. You could say this: Apple has $5.41 in $5.41. This is one interpretation. $5.41 in liabilities for every $1 of equity. Okay, and the debt to equity ratio, the D ratio, is better if it is lower. And that it's kind of common sense, it's the less debt you have, the more able you are to pay it back. It's like, I don't know how many people own houses here in this class, but banks like to see that if your house is worth uh, $500,000, they like to see that you have a lot of equity in the house, meaning that if you have $500,000 house and your mortgage is only 50,000, you have $450,000 of equity. That would be really good. However, if you have a $500,000 house and your mortgage is $495,000, that would be terrible. So the more equity you have in something, the better you are able to pay off that debt. Anyway, so that's the uh, two leverage ratios. The first one measures your ability to pay off interest, and obviously, the more income you make, the more able you are to cover your interest. 26 times is very good, and uh, obviously, a debt to equity, it's measuring your ability to pay off principal, the loan itself, and the less debt you have to others, the more able you're able to pay off whatever bondholder is looking at this ratio or potential bondholder. Anyway, that's the video. I hope everybody has a nice day. Thank you very much.